This is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and I have Anne-Marie here, and we are talking about retail sales amid the COVID-19 crisis. And this is the week ending April 26th.
April 26th, yep.
Yeah, and we have good news this week.
We do. So last week, a little bit of a downer, but we knew we were going up against Easter 2019. It's a big bump in vegetables and in fruit typically. So we knew that was a big bump to go up against. But this week, great news. Total produce sales, got to look at my cheat sheet here for a minute, up 23%. So very high double digits. And it wasn't just vegetables. Vegetables continued to outperform fruit. They were up about 30%, but fruit too, up 16%. So can't complain about that. I think this was a really good week to look at. There was no effect of Easter this year, last year. So we did see some additional, I would say, traffic in the store because of the meat coverage, the tightness in the meat supply. But overall, just a fantastic week for produce.
Well, we've talked a little bit about the meat supply with the mainstream media covering some of the processing and supply chain issues that meat has. I even saw it over the weekend. We've seen a lot of retailers. This isn't reflected in these numbers just yet, but a lot of retailers going back to very strict limits. Here in Texas, HEB was 2 total fresh meat products, regardless of what type it was. So we're seeing a little bit of panic buying in meat, and we're going to see that reflected elsewhere in the store as well. What are some of the things that we might see that you've seen in other categories?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This past week, which would not be reflected in these numbers, definitely a new bump in meat, but it already started the week that we are talking about, which is that week of April 26th. That's when the meat coverage started. That's when Tyson took out that full page ad in the New York Times and other media. And people were just worried that yet again, they would be looking at empty meat cases. So while they were in the store, absolutely, I think that led to a bump in produce. As we saw, the overall parameter was stronger. We saw a big bump in bakery, big bump in overall parameter, as well as edible food sales. So I have to imagine that it continues to be an elevated everyday demand. Even as some restaurants are starting to open up, it just really seems that people are cooking at home more, and it is resulting in continued higher demand. And looking at produce numbers that are, 22% over last year, that's very encouraging.
And it also puts pressure on other sources of protein. You saw eggs go up, and even in produce, a funny story. I was looking at the numbers, and tofu, of all things, when we first started this pandemic coverage, we were kind of had a little chuckle about the, flat sales for fake meat or, meat
Yep.
substitutes.
Yep.
They really weren't catching on with consumers, but as we're actually going to enter into perhaps some shortages of meat, depending on how the supply chain thing works out, we're seeing tofu is actually up 45% in volume over the last week, 30% over the last 4 weeks. We had a noticeable bump last week, and the dollars are up as well. Dollars are actually up even more than that. So
yeah, I agree. So we continue to see a lot of gaps in the meat department with fully stocked meat alternatives. That continues to be a picture across retailers in the country. But absolutely, over the years, as there was inflation or price pressure or limited supply in a certain protein, people just are in the habit of switching back and forth. And that includes going to things like eggs. Well, the issue with eggs, the dollars in eggs are up 50%. Volume is up about 22%. So enormous pressure on the supply in eggs as well. So then people start looking at some other sources of protein. To your point, it's not just tofu, but it's also mushrooms, and it's other items that consumers know have a higher protein content, like dried beans is another one that we continue to see go up very nicely. So I think this is a massive opportunity for the produce department to, yet again, we've talked about this before, to really emphasize the nutritional values of produce beyond the ones that are well known.
Well, I've been pushing this for years with the mushroom blend, and I even did it today in I made shepherd's pie for lunch, and I did a pound of diced mushrooms with a pound of ground beef.
Yeah.
And you could even go a higher percentage. Mushrooms are they're having pretty great sales right now and volume, at least at retail. And so that's another option that I think retailers and people who are promoting fresh produce can promote the idea of stretching your ground meat, whether it's turkey. I do it to turkey, I do it to chicken, I do it to ground beef, and adding the mushrooms in there, especially right now with the pricing pressure that we have in proteins. It is an inexpensive way to stretch what you've got, and a lot of people are looking for solutions like that right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one of the other realities of COVID-19 is a whole new economic reality. A lot of people are pressured economically. Typically, what we see is money saving measures like stretching the meat dollar, buying in bulk if you can. And to your point, mushrooms are a great way to stretch that meat dollar. And really, we continue to see that fantastic hot streak in oranges, which is to me another indicator of people looking for nutritional values in food. A lot of people looking to build their immune system. Oranges have been on a double digit, very high double digit growth streak year over year for 7 weeks now. And what other produce items are out there that can deliver on vitamin C and immune building qualities as well?
Peppers, bell peppers. They actually have more vitamin C than an orange. I actually wrote a column last week based on that of 8 things that have more vitamin C than an orange. But the whole produce department in general, we're seeing people really gravitate toward some of the longer shelf life items, lower cost items, potatoes, onions, oranges, and but we're also seeing some experimentation. We've talked before. You are a native of Europe, and leeks are your thing, but
Yes.
here in the US,
Yeah.
maybe leeks aren't so popular. I decided to try them today, and leeks are actually, I'm not the only one who's trying leeks out, because we're seeing what, 50%, 55% volume increase on leeks. So a lot of consumers are trying them as well. So there's a lot of different things that maybe you haven't tried yet that you can give a try in the produce department.
I think it's a massive opportunity for brands and produce departments alike to really be a helping hand in helping consumers cook up whatever is in their pantries, what is in their fridges. Everybody wants variety. In the past, we would go out to dinner if we had wanted variety. Well, that's still not an option for many of us. So really being that helping hand to provide us some inspiration is a great opportunity as well. If you look at sites like Pinterest or recipe.com, they're all reporting enormous surges in the number of searches that they're seeing. Those who break it down by age are seeing tremendous increases in the number of searches by millennial and Gen X generations, just looking for solutions that work for the family, some experimentation. So absolutely, this is a big opportunity to have people try new things.
Well, going forward, we're talking about what we can maybe project through the numbers. So this is the week leading up to Cinco de Mayo, and that's one of the biggest commodity-specific holidays. It's really a way for us to see how this stay-at-home orders, the reduced restaurants are going to affect avocado sales. I know I've seen a lot of merchandisers post photos of their Cinco de Mayo displays that they're putting together, and they all look fantastic, but are consumers actually in the store shopping on impulse like that? So this will be a really interesting one to see next week's numbers, to see year over year what that does to Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's frankly one of the hardest areas to judge right now. We continue to see a contraction of trips. We continue to see dollars move to one store, with consumers just trying to really spend everything and do their entire purchase at one store. So it's really that quick fill-in trip that is diminishing right now. So yeah, what kind of impact are those displays having, especially on a day like today where it's the middle of the week and there might not be the same kind of traffic. At the same time, I will say that we've seen a big push from trips on the weekend to the weekday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday have actually increased tremendously in terms of trips. So hopefully we'll actually see some good traffic and good payoff of the display efforts.